Shang-Chi Rules. Let me get that out of the way right off the bat. It is a rock-solid movie with an engaging story, some fun leads, and excellent pacing. And yes, I am a Marvel shill. I default enjoy most of what they make. And I enjoy the connectivity. I know some people have grown tired of it, and I get it. And I've also given up on the color grading, and they usually end with lots of CGI, but I still have fun with it. In fact, in this instance, I was on board with the CGI ending. I thought it was really cool. And the fight choreography in Shang-Chi rules. I'm gonna say some of those names that pop up in every single video I have seen about the topic. Here we go. Bill Pope, Destin Daniel Cretton, Simu Liu, Jackie Chan, Brad Allen, R.I.P., Police Story, Drunken Master, Mangar Zhang, and others. Those are the names that come up in every YouTube video I have watched about Shang-Chi. I don't need to sing their praises, they all did an amazing job. Simu Liu, man, he put in work. You can watch behind the scenes of him in these stunts, and my gosh, the difference between this and Iron Fist is night and day. But I instead want to focus on one guy. And you know I love me some Marvel villains. I've ranked their plans, I've made villainous scenes about them. I have some favorites: Vulture, Thanos, Mysterio, Ego, Zemo, Killmonger, Loki. I know, real groundbreaking stuff. But I really think there's a case to be made that Shang-Chi's antagonist, Wenwu, played by the incomparable Tony Leung, is not only the highlight of this movie, but maybe the best villain the MCU has produced so far. So I want to make my case. But first, I need to explain why it is such a miracle that the character of Wenwu is even remotely coherent. Because unlike most Marvel villains, Wenwu is not a direct adaptation of a comic character. He is instead a fusion of two very complicated characters, one with a messy comics history and one with an equally messy movie history. So I guess this segment is a mini Wenwu isn't Wenwu. Fantastic. Let's start with the simple one. In the comics, Shang-Chi's father is a man named Zhang Zhu. Kind of. He's the leader of an ancient organization, however, it is not called the 10 Rings, it's actually called the 5 Weapons Society, so a little different, but, simple enough, right? Well, you see, back in the olden days of the 1970s, Marvel had the rights to an extremely popular character named Fu Manchu. And when I say extremely popular, I mean so popular that you've probably never read an old Shang-Chi comic, but you're kind of familiar with the name Fu Manchu. That's because this character was also used extensively in radio plays and books, and also his famous mustache-beard combo that bears his name. When Nick Cage dresses like this in the Grindhouse trailer, he's rocking a Fu Manchu. But the character was also super racist, so Marvel did the right thing and renamed the character Zhang Zhu. Just kidding. The rights lapsed in Fu Manchu, so they needed to come up with a new name. I guarantee that if Marvel never lost the rights, Fu Manchu would still be around today. But anyway, Shang-Chi's father in the comics is actually Zhang Zhu. A little confusing, but audiences will probably be able to follow the change since most of them don't know anything about Shang-Chi comics. But that's only half of it. In this movie, Shang-Chi's father is also the Mandarin, a character that the MCU has been hinting at from the very beginning with seemingly no direction. As you probably know, in the comics, the Mandarin is Tony Stark's archenemy, his Joker, or Lex Luthor. Part of this has to do with Tony Stark's early connection to East Asia via Vietnam, since his 60s origin had Tony getting captured in the Vietnam War. Like, every few decades, Tony Stark's origin is updated to be part of whatever the current global conflict is that the US either started or just made worse, most recently Afghanistan. So, Tony faced off against many East Asian enemies, including the Mandarin, a Chinese warlord with 10 magic alien rings, each of which granted its wearer a different superpower. Pretty standard stuff. And through the years, the Mandarin had a pretty consistent look with the occasional extreme redesign, like how they turned him into a green monster man in the 90s cartoon where MODOK was a little baby. So Iron Man 1 comes out, and hey, that's the 10 rings. It's like the Mandarin. And that villain, he's got a ring. I wonder if he's the Mandarin, or he's working for the Mandarin? Could be. And then Iron Man 2, apparently, the 10 rings gave Vanko his ticket to Monaco. They have their hands in a lot of different pots, and they're meddling in Tony Stark's affairs. Again, this has to be leading to something. So then we get a comic that, at least at the time, was canon. I cannot find anything official one way or the other about whether it is canon now, but during the events of this 2-issue comic, Rhodey, in the new and improved War Machine armor, goes to China to fight the 10 rings. In fact, he's been tracking the 10 rings all over the world because they're such a big deal. And they have a hammer tech tank which fires ex-wife missiles that work because, as has been pointed out to me by many people many times, and I appreciate every single one, the ex-wife was a kinetic kill switch, which means it wouldn't detonate under a certain radius to protect the user, and there is no way that 20 feet is the radius. So the ex-wife worked perfectly, Rhodey used it wrong, justice served. Anyway, and here's where it gets really messy. At the end of this comic, which takes place during the events of Avengers, we actually kind of see the leader of the 10 rings, like just his hands, like Dr. Claw and Inspector Gadget. But he's a real guy, and seems to be known as, and is referred to by his subordinates as, Mandarin. But then in Iron Man 3, we learn that the Mandarin is a title invented by Killian. There was never anyone known as the Mandarin. And Wenwu makes the same point in Shang-Chi. And I can already hear some of you shouting, well, in the All Hail the King bonus one-shot on the Iron Man 3 DVD, someone working for the real Mandarin, who I think is supposed to be Darkhawk or something, kidnaps Trevor as punishment. Also, Justin Hammer has a boyfriend, first gay Disney character. Suck it, background characters holding hands and all the other stuff. And then in Ant-Man, we see one of the goons working for Mitch, whatever his name is, has a 10 rings tattoo, so they are still a thing. The tricky part of all of this is that most audiences only know about the Iron Man 3 Trevor twist. As far as they are concerned, there is no Mandarin, and the 10 rings is fake and was set up by Aldrich Killian. But canonically, there totally has been a Mandarin character in the background buying weapons and yellow jackets and tanks who also seems to have some sort of vendetta against Iron Man. And the real Mandarin is Chinese, even though that is not part of the identity of the 10 rings and no one knows who he is. So why did Killian make up the Chinese name Mandarin for his white terrorist who operates primarily out of the Middle East, since it did not come from Wenwu? Why the China connection at all? And I'm not saying this to nitpick, although I do have a nitpick for later. I'm just demonstrating how confusing the idea of the MCU Mandarin is. So we're adding Zhang Zu's confusing comic origin with Mandarin's messy MCU history and getting Wenwu. How on earth is this character supposed to work? He should be a disaster of canon and contradictions. But instead, the filmmakers craft a character who makes complete sense. He's a conqueror who thinks all of the Iron Man 3 Mandarin stuff is stupid, so he doesn't really want to talk about it. Basically, a completely new guy with a weapon that matches some flags from other movies, but that's it. It is genius. So that's the backstory. First actual reason why I believe Wenwu is the best Marvel villain. Wenwu has the best Marvel weapon. The 10 rings are cool as hell. Move over Mjolnir. Move over Stormbreaker. Move over Shieldy, the Captain America shield. That's probably what he calls it. Move over whatever the Eternals do. Glowy outlines. The 10 rings rule. It is a downright inspired move to turn the finger rings into arm bracelet rings. They're based on the iron rings that are typically used for training, gets your arms strong and your forearms tight, as seen in Drunken Master. But, like in Kung Fu Hustle, the best movie, you can also use them as weapons since they will protect your forearms from some weapons too. Also, they just look cool. And the 10 rings are an incredibly clever weapon because of how versatile they end up being. You can use them to make energy blasts. You can use them to make a big punch. Or you can put all 10 on one arm to make the biggest punch. They also extend into this energy whip thingy, and then on the other end, they can be a shield, or steps, or bars to swing off of, or they can help you hold on to something, or you can use them to do a big jump. The 10 rings seem to be limited to what a character can imagine. And since Shang-Chi has never trained with them before, they also seem to work based on instinct. You don't need to know how to use them beforehand. So if Wanda, or Doctor Strange, or Bucky got their forearms on these things, you assume the rings would work for those characters in ways that are unique to their individual fighting style. But the best part about the 10 rings is that they don't interrupt the flow of the fight. They enhance whatever the user is already good at. So exciting, well-choreographed kung fu gets elevated to the level where it can destroy an entire army. But the core of what makes the fight work is still intact. and they lend themselves to some absolutely killer fits. Who rolls up sleeves on a suit to their forearms? Someone whose forearms are deadly weapons. It is a mean look that's tough to pull off if you don't have the weapons on your wrist to back it up. Second reason Wenwu rules. He's in it for kind of the right reasons. Wenwu really had it all. He was a conqueror with a vast army and a bunch of vague weapon trafficking organizations, apparently, and he gave it all up, 100% for his family. And a lot of times in a story like this, you can't take the warrior out of the man, right? The father figure is called back into the world he used to be a part of. Maybe because he needs to, or maybe because he just misses the fight, we're never sure, but the father gives up on his family so he can return to the world he knew. It's Brandy. His life, his love, and his lady is the sea. But Wenwu is really all in on family. He doesn't stray, he isn't secretly using the rings, no one confronts him and says, "It's us or those damn rings." It isn't until Lee is killed and he believes his family is destroyed that Wenwu goes back to the only life he knows. He doesn't want to, Wenwu believes he needs to. And listen, if another villain makes this move, it's easy to dismiss him, but Wenwu is literally an old school conqueror. I completely understand why he thinks this is the right thing to do. But unlike it seemed in the initial trailers, Wenwu does not want Shang-Chi back because he wants an heir to his empire. Wenwu is completely driven by his desire to reunite their family by rescuing their mother. And the relationship between Wenwu and Lee is also completely believable. They complement one another stylistically, and the few seconds we see of Shang-Chi and Xiailing's childhood playing Dance Dance Revolution as a family suggests that mom and dad were happy together. If the opening scene did not sell the idea that Lee is able to stop Wenwu in his tracks, that she is the only one for him, then I don't think Wenwu's relentless pursuit of Ta Lo to rescue Lee would work. But we see some genuine chemistry between Wenwu and Lee that helps make an audience hope against hope that Wenwu might be right and he could reunite with his long-lost love. And that's why the journey here is so tragic. He's not in it for greed or power. A Lovecraftian soul-eating dragon has tricked Wenwu into freeing it under the guise of saving his wife. Now, not to nitpick, not unlike my podcast Mostly Nitpicking, you kind of figure at some point in their at least 8-year relationship, Lee would have told Wenwu about the evil monster trapped in her dimension that promises you whatever you desire most. And how that thing that it's promising is a lie, and that's just the monster's cries for help. That would be a fun convo. Even if she's not saying, "Hey, if I die, watch out for this," just like, "Hey, you know what's interesting about my village? We have a monster tied up that lies to you." But maybe Wenwu is just a bad listener. I don't know. Either way, Wenwu's love for his wife was corrupted. Like Shang-Chi, he was driven in the wrong direction by grief. Because this is a Phase 4 Marvel property, and the theme of Phase 4 appears to at least somewhat be grief. And then the third reason I think Wenwu might be the best villain. He hits all of the good antagonist boxes. Most importantly, he has something to teach Shang-Chi. And the film, through Michelle Yeoh's Ying-Nan, spells this out pretty clearly. Wenwu believes in family above all else, and he's willing to burn down Ta Lo to get it. And Shang-Chi is on the other side of that spectrum. He wants nothing to do with his family. He feels guilty for leaving Xialing behind and for doing nothing when his mom was killed, and he hates his father for forcing him to kill the leader of the Iron Clan, so Shang-Chi completely abandons his family. And in doing so, Shang-Chi throws the baby out with the bathwater. He gives up martial arts, and even after he comes back into the world of Kung Fu, Shang-Chi does not embrace the style that his mother taught him, perhaps because he wants to create some distance from the most traumatic moment of his life. But Shang-Chi needs to reconcile his issues with his family to reach his true potential. He needs to engage with the memory of his mother. In stark contrast to Wenwu, whose big issue is his inability to let Lee go. He can't accept her death either. Now, could these guys both benefit from a healthy dose of therapy? Yes. But in Shang-Chi's case, he'll have to settle for his aunt telling him that he is a product of everyone that came before him, his mother and his father. And if he wants to move forward, he needs to embrace, or at least acknowledge, his history and create something new. Sure, Shang-Chi is not breaking all that much new ground, but a villain with a fun power set, a reasonable motivation, and who can act as a clear foil to our hero is about as much as you can ask for. And at least for me, Wenwu is all of those things, tied up in a beautiful Tony Leung bow. And there are so many excellent Shang-Chi comics you can read that explore the relationship between Zhang Zu and Shang-Chi. The recent run of Shang-Chi does this really well, even though Zhang Zu is dead throughout it. And there's another Shang-Chi comic that a lot of people I talk to haven't read. I consider it kind of a hidden gem, and I talk about it in an extended version of this video that you can find on Nebula. You already know about Nebula. If you aren't subscribed to Nebula, there's never been a better time to join. We've got so many cool originals that I have been a part of, and I put all of my videos up on Nebula early with a little bonus content at the end. We call it Nebula Plus. Any video that has that little plus sign next to the runtime means that video has a Nebula Plus segment for me at the end of the video. I know some people do it a little bit differently. There's an extra 3 or 4, sometimes even 10 minutes of content related to the video that you have not seen if you haven't watched the Nebula Plus version. Here's the tease of the bonus from this video. The first reason this book is cool is because I find these books a lot of fun if you spend the whole book just looking at all the characters and like, who is that supposed to be? Some are very obvious because some characters are just called Caliban or whatever. But there are other characters like this henchman for Zhang Zu, who's apparently supposed to be a version of Taskmaster, which makes sense because he can get to take over different fighting styles. And we have partnered with this video's sponsor, CuriosityStream, for a bundle that gets you a year of CuriosityStream's high-quality documentaries on things like science and nature. There's even documentaries about bridges, like the world of bridges. Talk about China. They have their wind and rain bridges, and there's a documentary about how those are created and maintained, what they mean for the culture and the history, how they weren't built with screws or anything like that, just joints. It's very interesting. So if you want to get access to that bundle that includes Nebula and CuriosityStream, a yearly subscription is only $15, which not only helps you support your favorite creators, but it also means you don't need to watch sponsor reads and you get to see exclusive Nebula Plus content. The link is in the video description. It is curiositystream.com/NandoVMovies. Go check it out. As always, I've got to say a huge thank you to everyone who continues to support the channel on Patreon. You guys are amazing. If you want to see your name up here, get access to videos early, other cool stuff, like if you want to be part of the monthly book club. We're not sure what we're doing this month. It might be Radiant Black, it might be Powers of X, House of X. We're not sure. There's still time to vote on that, although we'll probably have the decision made pretty soon. But if you want to be a part of that conversation we have, throw in $15 a month at the book club. If you just want to see videos early, get your name on the videos, that is $1 a month. It's a terrific deal. Patreon.com/NandoVMovies. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. Also, listen to our podcast, Mostly Nitpicking. Every week, me and my friends DJ and Diggins pick apart a piece of pop culture by looking exclusively at the details. We have done episodes about Shang-Chi. We are about to record tomorrow, I think. Today, when this video goes out, we're going to record an episode about the movie Malignant. It's just insane. I don't even want to spoil it, but that episode's going to be weird. And we talk about other stuff, too. You can listen to us wherever you listen to your podcast. We are at Nitpicking Pod on Twitter. Again, the show is Mostly Nitpicking. As always, follow me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. I'm NandoVMovies on all of those platforms. That is all I've got. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.